All right. Good. Thanks for listening and thanks for tuning in. Welcome to the College Gridiron. This is Alex Campbell, and I've got legendary host here with me, Mr. Gerald Bentley. How are you tonight, Gerald?
Good to be on here.
Yeah,
We're
good to have you.
calling a little
Uh,
audible. No wrestling ring, no NFL. Gonna talk a little college football.
yeah, college football. That's right. No wrestling ring, no NFL. Our regular host Bruce, of course. We will hope the best for him and his family. Unfortunately, in the path of the hurricane, all accounts say though, I've been in touch with him. Says he's doing pretty well. Just
Good.
couldn't quite get the recording in.
Now
Yep.
there's all the power outages, tons of damage, and an
That's what
area
he's
that usually doesn't get hit with hurricanes.
That's what he's dealing with now. Yeah, they normally get missed, right? And that's what he's dealing
hmm
with now. He's had kind of a rolling, power outage here and there. It's like I haven't had long periods or anything, but it's unfortunate because it'll be on for 3 hours, then off for 2, and then on for 4, and then off for an hour. It's totally unpredictable. So
Mm.
anyway, yeah, my heart goes out to him, and of course everybody that was in the path of that storm, and all that. So
Absolutely.
all right. Well, we've got a few college games in action. I know we're just kind of talking about it before the show kicked off here, but Central Michigan firmly in the third quarter now, just over 11 minutes to play. Central only down by a field goal in that one. Of course, this is a 9.5-point game. What do you expect out of Michigan State this year?
Not much. I'd say the Spartans can't be all that happy with the enormous head coaching contract they gave out.
Yeah,
because that doesn't look like a good decision right now.
Not really. And, interesting. I mean, I'm from Michigan and I follow, University of Michigan and Michigan State pretty closely. And I remember, when they brought in Mel Tucker, and of course the contract they originally gave him, I felt was pretty large, but then he really kind of showed his worth. He turned over almost 60% of the team in one offseason in the transfer portal. And of course, in that transfer portal, he got Kenny Walker, and that was a game-changing move right there. I mean, Walker just took off in East Lansing. He was a one-man wrecking crew. I mean, I watched him run for over 140 yards in the second half against Michigan and win that game single-handedly. It was amazing. I haven't seen a running back do that since the 90s.
No, he put together that good season. It's just the Big Ten is so hard to play in, and where I'm at right here in the Midwest, I mean, Nebraska fans have seen that. I mean, who would have thought that Nebraska Cornhusker football would get outdrawn in their stadium by the Nebraska women's volleyball team? The volleyball team packed in 93,000 fans. The Huskers are going to have some trouble again this year, and it's because of going into the Big Ten, because no matter what you do, you're going up against the Ohio State University, the University of Michigan, Penn State University. Iowa's always good. I mean, it's just a hard conference to sustain success in.
It really is difficult. And I think the West sometimes gets ostracized as the weaker of the two sides, but really, in fact, I think the West is a little bit deeper. The East is top heavy, but the West, I think, is a little bit deeper because you're right. Go on the road and play against Iowa at Kinnick Stadium at 8 p.m. Good luck. Any program struggles there. I've seen Ohio State struggle there. I've seen Michigan struggle there. Michigan lose there, ranked in the top 5 before. It happens. That's a hard place to play, like you said. And the other thing that really hurt Nebraska, I think, is when they left the Big 12, their recruiting base really, when they had a direct line to Oklahoma and Texas, that really dried up very quickly. And they are not super competitive in the Midwest when it comes to recruiting. Not as competitive as they were right there just south of them. You know what I mean? So, and that was a challenge for them.
No, the dominoes fall. We're still seeing some of those dominoes from conference realignment falling now. And that was part of it. Nebraska leaving, having been a power, they leave the Big 12, they go to the Big 10. Where did some of those recruits go to? Some of those Texas and Oklahoma recruits, they're going to the SEC. They're going to other schools in the Big 12. It's not coincidental that when Nebraska leaves, KU and K-State get better after really scuffling for years, because they're picking up some of those recruits. They're going to be able to play a bunch of their games in Oklahoma and Texas. It's a lot easier to keep kids there.
And ultimately, in the era of NIL, I think that's going to, make more parity in college football in that same direction. Because, look, if I'm a 5-star recruit, do I want to sit on the bench at Alabama for 2 years before I even get a chance? Or will I mean, I could be the starting quarterback at Kansas on day one and make a contribution, sell some jerseys, you know what I mean? Probably make a little money. You know what I mean? And so I think the NIL is going to push those guys to get to what we're going to kind of start to see is really what it's always been, and that's kind of a minor league to the NFL. I mean, if we're really being honest, the top 25 has always kind of been really kind of look. The top end starters are all going to the NFL.
Absolutely.
You know, and that's every kid that's on that team. That's their dream. Every single one of them. And of course, it was Cardell Jones who was famous for saying, "I didn't come to school to go to school." You know what I mean? And so, and I appreciate him for his honesty. You know what I mean? I wish it wasn't the case, but it is.
Being a product of the Ohio State University system, I can relate to that because, I mean, I was able to take history of rock and roll. I took biology of the dinosaur. I took physics of science fiction. I took coaching wrestling, history of the African-American athlete. You know, you can go to the Ohio State University and take a lot of fun classes that really are interesting, but not exactly academically challenging. And you can get through your 2.5 years that you actually have to stay eligible to play football. So yeah, that was a moment of honesty. I think it's shared by many players on the Buckeyes roster. And, you know, hey, talking about quarterbacks transferring, we already saw it. The big game that kicked off week 1, first time Florida played a non-conference game outside of the friendly confines of the state of Florida since the 1990s. They go and take on the Utah Utes, and it didn't go well. New quarterback, a transfer, Graham Mertz from Overland Park, Kansas. He surprised people by not going to KU, going to Wisconsin, played in Wisconsin, and being a pro-style passing quarterback for the Badgers. Not surprisingly, didn't go terribly well. It hasn't for anyone since Russell Wilson. He transfers to the Gators, went in and started career high 333 yards, but it didn't transfer to points. Gators only score 11 against the Utes. Went a pathetic 1 of 13 on third down. What does that mean for the Gators? They don't like losing in Florida.
No.
Billy Napier didn't do terribly well with a high first-round draft pick NFL quarterback. How hot do you think it is for the head Gator right now?
He's in our top 5 as far as coaches on the hot seat during the season this year because they have just had no movement. Of course, Napier took a team nobody expected to 11-1 with the Raging Cajuns, and you know what I mean. What a phenomenal run he had with them over a 4-year period, and that we see this a lot. You know, they're gonna these guys that have these hot runs are gonna have a chance. I remember young Dabo Sweeney having a hot run for a small school at one point, and look where he is now. You know what I mean? Like, and so. That's kind of the progression. Florida takes a swing on Napier, and it doesn't look like it's working out. And that doesn't mean that it'll never work out for him. I mean, how many times have we seen, you know, on a second time around, does it kind of click? I think you see that a lot. So, but I just don't see this working out in Florida for him. They need a winner. There are only, I would say, maybe 10 fan bases that demand contention every year, and Florida is probably on that list. And that fan base has got to be rabid for a winner. They haven't really seen that since Urban Meyer.
Yeah, no,
not consistently.
The McElvain era didn't go terribly well either.
Yeah,
and then we had another SEC. It was a SEC Thursday night. The Thursday night lights shined on the SEC. Another coach who rode a year, and in this case, just a year of, say, mid-major college football. Eli Drinkwitz, he had a great year at Appalachian State, took him to a New Year's Day bowl game, and that propelled him to the MU job. They kicked off their season, didn't cover the spread. You know, it kind of is what it is. They took on South Dakota. They were up 28-3 at the half, pulled all the starters. They end up winning 35-10. I think it's a big year for Eli Drinkwitz, too. I mean, it's time to have a winning year. He's banging some good recruiting classes, the best recruiting classes, honestly, Missouri's ever had. But
yeah,
it's not translating to results right now.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, they just were barely bowl eligible last year. Of course, high expectations this year. Didn't meet the spread. I mean, whatever. They pulled all the starters, and South Dakota didn't have a chance in that game. Wasn't able to move the ball at all until they did. So I can't be too mad about that, whether they didn't get the spread or not. It wasn't like they got annihilated in the trenches or anything like that, or anything you'd really have deep concern about. But you're right. It's a make or break year for Drinkwitz and for Missouri. And in a year that really, okay, aside from Georgia and probably Alabama, like the SEC, East and West, is as strong as it always is or will be in the next few years. This
I
year,
agree with that.
So specifically this year would be, I would expect a good year from Missouri. The schedule sets up pretty well, and yeah, they have the talent to do it. Like you said, they've had the best recruiting class time in Missouri.
I think the best football recruiting they've ever had. And if you take a look at the first half, I think now you can say the quarterback battle that's been talked about in the media is over. Yeah. Brady Cook, your returning starter, 17 to 21, 172 yards, a touchdown, and he got the rock to the guy who was a number 1 tier recruit, 5-star recruit, Luther Burden, playing his natural position now. They got him playing the slot.
Yep.
7 catches, 96 yards, a touchdown in one half of play. I mean, that's what you want to see. That's what's going to keep you getting those 5-star wide receivers. They can't all go to the Ohio State.
Right.
Looks like Missouri's going to get another one. They're supposed to be signing up the consensus number 1 recruited wide receiver. He conveniently lives in St. Louis.
Yeah, that convenient.
To keep those guys coming, you got to feed the rock to him, because Luther Burden, just Cardell Jones, he didn't go to Columbia because he knows it's one of the top 3 broadcast schools in the country.
That's not why he's
Columbia to play in the National Football League.
That's right. That's why he's there. It's an audition, and it's a chance for his body to be ready for the NFL, right? I mean, it's to groom an audition for the NFL. That's why he's there. And you're right. I mean, that was the success they had, is just feed him over and over again. Now in his natural position. That's where I see him in the NFL. He's 5'11", kind of a lightning fast type athlete, great hands. He just translates so well to that wide receiver 3 or slot position, I think, at the next level already. He's a guy that can go pro next year.
Yeah, and that's where the game's going too, because you're seeing college quarterbacks transition to starting almost immediately now in the NFL.
Right.
Largely because the NFL is going to the spread formations, a lot of you're seeing plenty of teams that are massively de-emphasizing the running back. The Kansas City Chiefs are going to go into the season with no fullback and 3 running backs. And one of them is Jerick McKinnon, who's wrapped in shrink wrap until the midway point, because they want to make sure he's ready for the stretch run.
And the starter's a late round draft pick, still on his rookie deal.
7th round pick, and your number 1 pick running back with the Chiefs, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, was a surprise on the roster. I think going into training camp, most people would have said he's gone. So you're seeing that NFL teams kind of sagging more to that college football style offense.
What do you think of Bryce Young in Carolina?
I think if they can keep him standing upright, he should be fine. Tua Tagovailoa's career kind of scares me.
I got a theory on that front. I really do. It's blame me. I got a lot of theories, but I think the quarterback position, we're seeing it evolve into something that it previously wasn't, more than just like scrambling and more than just being able to escape the pocket like that. I think we're seeing it as a shorter career. I really do. Tua's not just because they're smaller, they run more and they get hit. Yes, because of that, but that's not the only reason. I think also the window to win in the NFL, because it's such a quarterback-driven league, is when the quarterback's on the rookie deal in those first 5 years anyways.
Oh, very true. I mean, the Chiefs were a big exception to it, because they were able to use Mahomes and Kelsey really to lift on one and think would get the job done. I mean, Juju Smith-Schuster was basically off the scrap heap. He had a couple bad years with the Steelers. He ends up being your major receiver. They are in a position to win the Super Bowl largely because of Kadarius Toney, who is a cast-off from the New York Giants.
Correct.
So, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, you need a lot of things to go your way if you're paying a quarterback some big money.
Well, the reality of drafting somebody like Patrick Mahomes is so slim to none, even if you get a top 3 draft pick. In fact, it makes it less likely if you really look at the numbers that those quarterbacks drafted in the top 3 often don't pan out like Pat Mahomes. Normally, it is a gem from a later round, really. But that's not going to happen again. So the point is, you want to get somebody like Jalen Hurts who's serviceable at that close to that level. He's never going to be Patrick Mahomes, but he's close to that level. He's a really good NFL quarterback. He's got that wiggle room. But is that really a quarterback that I could see lasting more than 6-7 years at that level? No, not really. Not at the pace he's playing now.
Much more of a passer.
Yeah,
I mean,
not at the pace he's playing now.
You're seeing it with Josh Allen in Buffalo.
Yeah. Allen's going to start to break down, I believe, and already has in a way. I think so too. Cam Newton broke down real fast he was dominant for a long time, but when he hit a wall, man, he hit a wall.
He fell hard, and I think Lamar Jackson, you're already seeing it because the Ravens have made the playoffs a couple of years in a row, and they had to do it without Lamar Jackson. They're committed to him, but it's going to be a challenge.
Lamar, a lot of that is said to be about the contract and how some of his disputes and things like that. I don't love that either. That's the only thing, is that when I think about that and I think about my leader of the team, I don't love that either. Yeah. And I think the one silver lining with Lamar is, if you really kind of peel back the onion and look at his passing numbers, he's actually a really good passer. That's the only thing.
Better, and he'll have some receivers this year, so there's a chance that
when he does throw the ball and he's not looking to run first, he's pretty good. I'd say he's a top 10 actual passer in the NFL at this point. I know he's got one of the top 3 highest passer ratings over the last 10 years. A lot of that's dumping it off to a running back. You know what I mean? But at the same time, a lot of the league's doing that. So sure. A lot of the stats are juiced by that. Look, there's a reason that CJ Stroud's stats at Ohio State look so good. When you have those receivers, you can catch in Jigba on a drag route at 5 yards, it turns into an 85-yard touchdown. Half the time. You know what I mean? So it's a similar thing. You get a lot of dink and dunk in the NFL now because you get more of all these spread formations, and so it happens a lot. So he's not the only one that's getting padded like that. And I think he's an underrated passer. I really do. So there is a silver lining to that. I think he could have a Randall Cunningham type career where he becomes more of a pocket passer and kind of saves himself from further injury. We'll see. We'll see. But yeah, I think those windows, though, I really do. Like, Bryce Young might only be a 6-year quarterback. Yeah, 5-year quarterback. Tua probably is only a 6-year quarterback at this pace, right?
I would think so. I mean, you can only take so many injuries.
Hold them together for this year, see if you can compete, and then I don't know what happens after that. I really don't.
Yeah, I still feel all the knee surgeries and the back injury I've had, and you can only take so many. You go under the knife after every season. Every one of those, your power level, your strength meter, like a video game, each time you take a hit like that, it's womp, 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 womp. Eventually it's womp, womp, womp.
Yeah. And of course,
you're done.
With concussions and all the concussion protocol, it means that, for one, obviously the player's health comes first. Tua's health comes first. I would hate to see him have another concussion, of course. You know what I mean? Ultimately, though, there's a huge factor for the team. It doesn't have to be a serious concussion to hold him out for a month at this point. 2 months, maybe.
No,
it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to be a serious one, and it could completely derail your season. It'd be akin to somebody having turf toe and it's a key player and half the season's gone. You know what I mean? It just doesn't happen like that. So concussion's the only one that can be minor. Of course, in his case, it wouldn't be minor if he got one, but he could miss a lot of time because of all the ones he's already had. And so that could be damning. And it's, you have to imagine, we've seen this so many times, saw it with Steve Young, saw it with Troy Aikman towards the end of his career. Just a lot of guys, once those concussions add up, it's almost like, the toothpaste never goes back in the tube. You know what I mean?
You can
the milk never unsours, and that's just how life works, A
lot of the pro wrestlers I talk to, they talk about having a bump card. You can only take so many. Yeah. How many extreme matches can you do? How many times can you jump off the top of the cage? Well, only a few. So you don't want to burn them all. Hey, big game coming up because college football in full speed ahead mode right now. A lot of non-con games, a few conference games. Week 1, they don't have the NFL to worry about. you have Sunday night football.
Love it.
On ABC. LSU against Florida State. So a really big, legitimate competition, interconference game.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see that one going? Because talking about coaches on the hot seat, Florida State begging to get out of the ACC.
Yeah, Norville, of course, had a good year, 10-win season last year. And like you said, Florida State and Clemson have to be, the low-hanging fruit of the ACC that's getting ready to be plucked by the SEC or the Big Ten. And so this is an audition year for them as much as anything else. And really, Norville's chance at taking the next step with his team. And I think he's got a pretty good roster to do it with. But LSU, I think LSU is probably the class of the SEC West this year. I really do. I think Kelly had it humming in the right direction last year. They got better and better as the year went on. That receiving core is as talented as ever. The defense is loaded. They got a lot of returning starters, and Brian Kelly's a really, really good coach. I don't love and respect the decision he made and how he left Notre Dame. I think there's a more professional and more courteous way to do that, especially when you're talking about kids. But I get the premise, and I think that he's got a chance this year. I honestly wouldn't be shocked if we saw LSU in the playoff.
You can probably see, I'm pretty confident you'll see at least 2 SEC schools in it. LSU, a 2-point favorite going into the game, over under a 56.5. I'd say LSU. I think the SEC thumps the ACC in that game.
Yeah, I'll take LSU, minus the points. 2 points is nothing. Look, they give 3 for home field advantage. So they're basically saying it's a toss-up, which I think is interesting. I looked at this game. I saw this as like one of the kind of easy picks of the week, honestly. Because while I like Florida State and I think they're going to have a pretty good year, I would expect them not to surpass last year, but still contend with Clemson for the ACC in the end. And we'll see. Look, Clemson's got a lot to prove with Cade Klubnik. Obviously the DJ Ukulele experiment went south, and there's lots of proof with Klubnik now. And can Dabo win without Venables? So far, that hasn't been the case. So it'd be interesting to find out.
They get a little bit easier matchup to start the season than their conference mate, the Seminoles. They are on, again, no NFL, so it's Monday night football.
Monday night.
NCAA style. Clemson taking on the second best athletic department representative at Duke football. Clemson against the Blue Devils. They are 13-point favorites going into the game, and I can't see any way Duke beats Clemson.
No, I don't think Duke beats Clemson. And honestly, 13 points, well, that's a big spread. I almost expect it to be a little bit more.
If it's that close, it's disappointing for Clemson. It's almost a moral loss. They need to thump them.
Yeah, exactly. That doesn't bode well for what Clemson thinks, what Vegas thinks about Clemson this year. You'd like to see that game at more of like a 17.5. You know what I mean? Like that would feel better to me. 20 would feel great. You know what I mean? But they're apparently not confident. And again, it's because of what I just said. They're unproven without Venables, and they're unproven since Trevor Lawrence, really. So he had a good run with Bryant and then Lawrence and everything, and that defense was loaded on both of those teams. But we'll see because the DJ experiment did not go well. And again, Venables, look at Venables too. I think he's in trouble as well, because
absolutely
you go to Oklahoma and you have a losing record like that in your first season. First of all, that's terrible. They have such huge high expectations at Oklahoma. Secondly,
and not just losing, the way they lost. They were uncompetitive in some games, utterly unprepared. Didn't look like Oklahoma. They looked like Nebraska Big Ten edition.
Exactly. And with all due respect to the Big 12, they were atrocious on defense. And that's not a conference that's known for its defense. And you hired a defensive coach. To me, that is a really, really big red flag. When you bring in a coach that's specifically good on one side of the ball and then your team struggles more on that side of the ball, that's not good. The Rich Rod experiment in Michigan didn't go well. Okay. But day one, the offense looked faster. Regardless. On day one. You know what I mean?
Sometimes I think what you do see, though, is when the coach comes in and they're a expert on one side of the football. Maybe they're not used to being the head coach. They're not used to delegating.
Yeah.
They're doing too much coaching, too much doing, and not enough managing.
Yeah.
And they end up struggling because you have to be involved with everything.
Yeah,
and you
I
see
agree.
it. Charlie Weiss, great offensive coordinator, did a terrific job in the NFL. Not a good college football coach. And not particularly good on the side of the ball where he was an expert.
Especially once he got to Kansas, right? Yeah, no, I agree. I think Notre Dame, he had a pretty good run. He's really achieved more in that time at Notre Dame, or as much as anybody did next, except for Brian Kelly, since basically Lou Holtz. You know what I mean? So there is that. But so he had a good, was it 3 or 4 years there? I know that I'm forgetting the quarterback. Why am I forgetting the legendary quarterback that played for Charlie Weiss at Notre Dame? It always just escapes me his name. You know what I'm talking about? He Brady Quinn fell in the draft, and then the draft the GMs were proven right because Quinn, of course, didn't have a successful NFL career.
No, he's Quinn. Not going into the Cleveland Browns Hall of Fame anytime soon.
He is not. I
hate to go back a little bit of news. Let's go hit back the ACC, the Atlantic Coast Conference.
Sure.
The traditional members of the Atlantic Coast Conference, of course, Stanford, Cal, and SMU commit to join the ACC, and Washington State and Oregon State, they're going to make the Pac-12 great again.
Okay.
That's the breaking news that came out today. I mean, this can't be over because adding 3 schools that are pretty big stretches to be in the Atlantic Coast Conference. Stanford and Cal are about as far as you can get.
2 Pacific Coast teams.
ACC.
Yeah.
Florida State and Clemson already wanted out. This can't help any.
No, it can't. It can't. And the ACC is just grasping at straws to try to compete with the Big Ten and the SEC. Unfortunately, there aren't enough straws available at this point. Unless okay, that's not true. If the ACC can fully lure Notre Dame, then maybe they can balance out some of the power. I just don't think they can. If
they could get NBC's contract.
Yeah, that's the point right there. Yeah.
The only way the ACC gets TV exposure is playing games against Notre Dame on their contract. Do you know what network the ACC games are on this year?
I don't actually.
The CW.
Really?
Yeah.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
The conferences have been playing a game of musical chairs for TV partners.
I'm aware of that. Yeah.
Well, the ACC lost. They're on the CW. They only did slightly better than the Pac-12.
Yeah, and that's what all this is.
Runner-up was going to be your games could be on HSN. If you go to the gas stations, where the gas stations have the little TVs,
the GSN,
the gas station network, and maybe Home Shopping Club, QVC2. They maybe let you do that, and they'll just run the today's special value down on the bottom.
Why not?
I mean, being on the CW, that's not good. You're not exactly banging on all cylinders.
No,
you're not competing against the Big 12, the SEC, or the Big 10 for TV money.
Not at all. The Big 10 went out and got a conglomerate of networks and that appeared to be the wisest decision because that's what allowed their TV deal to swell so big and how all the athletic departments got insanely wealthy and it really why they're drawing all these big schools because they can actually pay the athletic departments more money from that TV deal than the SEC can. The SEC is close, but not quite. And that's of course ESPN and Disney Plus territory.
And the Big 12. Genius move by Brett Yormark, the new commissioner, to have an escalator clause in their contract for any Power 5 school they add. They picked their initial contract, divided it on per team, and every other Power 5 team they add, they get an additional share on top.
Yeah.
So that's why they were able to reach out to Arizona State, Utah, Colorado. And say, hey, come on in. We got a full share for you. Let's go.
Yeah, and with those additions, I really like what the Big 12 did. I feel like the Big 12 has survived as they were a potential write-off in all this, just like the ACC.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of kind of wallowing in the aftermath like the ACC is trying to do, they were more progressive. They got ahead of the ball and ended up bringing in those key schools. And I think the Big 12 has got a future ahead of it. And new rivalries and old rivalries renewed. With Colorado coming back into the fold. So
absolutely, and Coach Prime.
Yeah, exactly. Coach Prime, which is that is the center of college football in many ways right now, the University of Colorado. And it's going to be one of my favorite teams to watch all season. I don't expect them to accomplish much, but boy, are they going to be fun to watch.
They'll play fast.
They'll play fast.
They want to run a play every 7 seconds, and they're getting a matchup tomorrow, 11 a.m. They're going to go up against the TCU Horned Frogs.
Yeah, it's a big matchup too for Colorado. They're a 20.5-point dog on the road. Boy, would it behoove them so well to make a good showing in that game, beat that spread, and at least push the Horned Frogs a little bit.
You know what? I think it's a win for Colorado. No matter what the score is, if they hit the over, as long as it's not TCU scoring 48. If Colorado can turn it into a track meet, which is what they say they want to do.
Yeah.
They want to play old school Dick Vermeil, Kansas City Chiefs football and try to outscore people. If they lose 42-28, 45-35, that's a win because against lesser competition, they will out-athlete people and run them off the field.
Oh, they will. Yeah, they will. When they go to play Austin Peay or whatever, yeah, they're gonna boat race them for sure, 100%. Yeah, I mean, and as more as this time goes on, the more athletes he's going to recruit and the faster they're going to get. And I think as long as Colorado isn't a 3-year and out stepping stone for Prime, as long as that's not the case, there could be a huge future at Colorado for him and for the program because of that. I mean, he could bring a really dynamic, athletic football team on both sides of the ball. I mean, he's a former NFL cornerback known as one of the most athletic, if not the most athletic corner of all time. Mm-hmm. So there's some lineage there, some history there as well too. So Prime knows football, and what Prime knows best, honestly, is how to connect to this generation. That's sure. That's the most important part, is that he's a hell of a players coach. From all accounts, all the players love him. He's really fun. If they have, video of his practices, he's playing hip hop music. He's getting in the drills with them as much as he can. I mean, he's a really active, younger coach who's got a cool history. He's a fun guy to play for, and he really knows his X's and O's. And his son's not too bad either.
Yeah, and you know what? He's in a good conference too, because the Big 12 isn't the SEC. It's not the Big 10.
Yeah.
The Big 12 defense is optional. There's lots and lots of scoring, except for Iowa State tries to play defense. Mm-hmm. But otherwise, I mean, it's game on. Let's go. Let's try to score 40 and see who can get there first.
That's right. It's a Madden game.
Style that lends well to prime time.
Mm-hmm.
Much more so than the SEC or the Big 10, where, I mean, you're just getting beat up. He wants to play graceful, elegant football. They want to run. They want to play fast break football. A lot easier to do that in the Big 12. I think he'd be well served to stay there. And with NIL money in a major market, I mean, they're basically Denver. He's in a major media market.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
They're going to spread the country because now you got West Coast teams too. You'll get the exposure. I mean, you're solidly, I think, in the number 3 league right now of what looks like is going to end up being basically 4 mega conferences.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of time before it shakes out to there, because I don't think the new Pac-12 with Oregon State, Washington State, Boise State, anchored by probably the UNLV running Rebels.
I'll tell you what, they'd be better off. They'd be better off on a TV deal to join the Mountain West.
I think that's what'll happen is the Mountain West.
I'm not even kidding.
Those two teams will merge and change the name.
That'll make the Mountain West better. That'll bring a little more attention to the Mountain West. They'll probably get a little better contract the next couple of years at some point, and that'll help them.
Maybe it'll be the Pac West.
But, I agree. They'll do a name change or something. But yeah,
what's good about that is when Florida State and Clemson leave the ACC,
Mm-hmm.
and West Virginia and Central Florida leave the Big 12, then the Big 12 can bring UNLV over like they were talking about, and UNLV will get the full share because they're coming over from a Power 5 conference. So that way, that would get Las Vegas in as a conference trip for KU. So then I'd have justification to go to Las Vegas a few more times a year because I can go see KU play there and go see the Chiefs play the Raiders. So
there you go.
Everything falls into place.
So let's take a look. I mean, just real quick before we're out at like kind of our predictions is, this is week 1. So like, where do we see this season going in these big, because right now I think we're only talking about really, 2-3 conferences having a conversation in the playoffs. So tell me, the Big 12 is pretty much your territory. Who do you see the Big 12 champion as this year?
K-State or Texas?
Yeah.
Because a lot of it, I think, depends on how much, and we had talked about this on my show.
Yeah.
How much motivation is Texas, and I don't think Oklahoma is going to turn around. I think it's coming down to Texas or K-State.
Mm-hmm.
How much motivation is Texas going to have with a foot out the door already to the SEC? And K-State with Chris Kleiman, that is a very well-coached, disciplined team with an NFL-style quarterback ready to go. I think K-State wins, and I think they're the proxy for TCU from last year, and they go to the playoffs and get beaten down by the SEC and the Big Ten schools.
That's fair. Yeah, I think K-State also is probably, and for the same reason, because, and like I said on your show before, I just don't know that if I'm, Steve Sarkisian in Texas, even if I'm in position to win the Big 12, as long as my spot in the playoff looks good, I'm probably going to just forfeit that game, honestly. Because I don't want to risk injury to my key players before the playoff run, and certainly not, going into next season in the SEC, because I don't care if I get this last Big 12 trophy, not really, and unless it's like Texas wants to stick it to the Big 12 on the way out, kind of thing, which I just don't see that as being enough. You know what I mean? I don't think that's going to be quite enough to draw. If put it this way, maybe not even Sark. If I'm some of the players, I don't want to play in that game.
Yeah, I think they're looking forward to the SEC. They've wanted out of the Big 12 for years.
Yeah.
A lot of the realignment issues were started by Texas with the Longhorn Network.
That's what forced
really
Nebraska out,
screwed
right?
up the money.
Yeah.
And that got Texas looking at taking 4 teams with them and joining the Pac-12. That created the instability with the Big 12. Mm-hmm. They've wanted out for years. So now they're looking ahead, and be careful what you wish for, because you just may get it.
I agree. It's a hornet's nest. It's a hornet's nest that they're stepping into. And I think Oklahoma's in real trouble. We talked about Nebraska and the mistake they made. I think this is the Nebraska mistake that Oklahoma makes.
Oh, I agree.
I really do. They're stepping right into it with a coach that's struggling, that's likely going to be locked in there for another year, if not 2, in that struggle, unless it completely blows up this year. And then is that any better?
There's always enough money. If you want to replace the coach, there's always a billionaire donor who will
I understand.
Stroke a check and they'll be gone.
But if you have to replace him, you're 10 steps behind where you are now anyways. Mm-hmm. So that's even worse going into the SEC. And I think that Texas is going to run away with your recruiting. They already own it because most of it's in the state of Texas.
Sure.
So they're going to run away with those recruits. I believe, and the Big 12 is going to gobble up some other ones. And I think Oklahoma, in a lot of ways, is going to be left in the lurch without its other Big 12 ties that it's had for so long, and especially leaving, kind of like March, where it comes in like a lion and leaves like a lamb. Oklahoma's been a behemoth in the Big 12.
Yeah,
and it's
you don't want to try to turn it around in the SEC.
Oh no, not at all. That's just not. Ask Missouri. It's not an easy road to hope.
and really, out of the schools that have joined the SEC, Missouri's been the most successful.
Right. And even
Missouri was in the championship game. They've continuously put guys into the NFL.
Correct.
They got multiple NFL players on the team this year, and what's that got them? Okay, you beat Kentucky, you beat Vanderbilt, you beat Arkansas every so often, but
I would say they're not
a threat to anything.
No, they're not truly competitive in the SEC. Not really. And they're not going to be truly competitive in the SEC this year, even though expectations are a little higher. It just won't happen.
No, they could win 7 or 8 games, but they're not contending for anything.
Georgia specifically and Alabama are so good. So good. It's just like Michigan and Ohio State in the Big Ten. Those rosters are so incredibly loaded. Michigan, they just came out with the Senior Bowl numbers, and Michigan had some crazy, like 7 invites off the offensive line alone. You can only start 5 guys on the offensive line, and the 7 O-line invites came from one team.
Michigan's loaded up, and if you're questioning, as a Missouri fan, if you're questioning why Brady Cook's the quarterback, we have a head coach who wanted an explosive running quarterback who could stretch the field both with his arms and his legs. Well, that explosive, game-breaking stretch quarterback that Missouri should have had, his name's Kendrick Bell. His older brother, Ronnie Bell, was a wide receiver for the Michigan Wolverines. He's on the field on Sundays for the San Francisco 49ers now. And Kendrick, who was the Simone Award winner for the top high school player of the year in Kansas City at Park Hill High School, he is now with the Michigan Wolverines. So if you're wondering why you got Brady Cook out there at quarterback, that's why.
Yeah, Michigan Wolverines. And, he's going to start off his 3rd on that depth chart. He's a big kid, too. 6'3", 180, super good athlete. I mean,
great athlete, very explosive player.
Very explosive. And, like, that's the most interesting thing as somebody who's watching Michigan football right now is you've got a 3-year guy, McCarthy, is a 5-star recruit, and he's really the sky's the limit with his arm talent, and he's pretty mobile. He's kind of that more prototypical NFL current kind of quarterback where he can get outside the pocket and scramble, but he also has the arm talent to be a pocket passer. But then you look at Jaden Daniels, who's another 5-star recruit that they just got. And then Bell beyond him. It's like they're getting more and more athletic as the generations go down, as the depth chart goes down. And so you can kind of see where Harbaugh is inching closer and closer to his Colin Kaepernick offense. You know what I mean? He's getting closer and closer to that. And I think he'll get there real soon.
I got to watch Kendrick in high school just down the street, and he broke records for offense. Points scored by Park Hill. This team wasn't really good because the defense was a sieve, but they were losing games. They were scoring 52 and still losing. I think they averaged 48 points a game, and they only won 6 games.
Yikes. So how about the SEC? Who do you see running away with the crown there?
Georgia, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're still loaded.
The deeper question is Georgia the new Alabama?
Yeah, quite possibly, because at some point the game does start passing you by, right?
Right.
I mean, eventually. How long's Nick Saban going to keep going?
Right.
I was covering the original Cleveland Browns back in the 90s when they had the all-star young coaching staff of Bill Belichick as the head coach and Nick Saban as the defensive coordinator.
Yeah, well, amazing.
They've both done tremendous, but it's been a long time. At some
and Belichick is showing signs of cracking as well, let's be honest.
Sure. Yeah.
Already.
Yeah, and that Patriots team, they may well be just awful this year.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see how they do. I think Bill O'Brien will help them. Their offense will be better than it was last year, but that's not, I don't believe, a contender for the East at all. I think they're clinching last place in the East because
I think they get last place in the East. I also think they're going to upset someone down the stretch. They're going to break someone's heart down the stretch because the defense is going to play that well. It just always does.
They may go 5-12. But they're not.
And they're going to
contending for anything.
It's going to be some stupid thing. Like it'll be like whatever their last game against the Jets is. I think it's like week 15 or something like that. Like they'll destroy the Jets' playoff chances or something. It's going to be remarkable. I'm going to love watching it. But it's going to be one of those games because Belichick will just get that. He'll make the right halftime adjustments on defense and he'll frustrate Aaron Rodgers. And you get Aaron Rodgers in a deficit, I'll tell you what, he's not coming back from it. That's the thing I don't love about Aaron Rodgers. If we could just take a pause there real quick. And I don't love about that decision too, is that Rodgers is the type of guy when he gets in trouble. See, like all the champions, Trevor Lawrence throws 3 interceptions the first half. He comes back and wins the game. You know what I mean? Tom Brady goes down by 3 scores against Atlanta Super Bowl, throws 2 picks, including a pick 6. He doesn't care. He comes back, wins the game in the second half. Rodgers cannot struggle out of the gate. I watched him for years in the NFC North, cannot struggle out the gate and then bounce back. And I'm just interested to see how the season goes with a weak young offensive line, an old quarterback, a young receiving core that may not communicate super well all the time. Should be pretty interesting, and all these high expectations. Where have we seen this before?
Absolutely, it's definitely going to be interesting, and at least we get games that really count and some actual competition going now, and actually some decent matchups for the traditional week where it's chump games.
Yeah, I agree.
Got some good matchups. We haven't even gotten into it. South Carolina, the Gamecocks taking on the North Carolina Tar Heels.
Yep. Yeah,
that's Virginia from the Big 12 taking on Penn State, former Big East matchup.
The Drew Aller's first game there will be really interesting to watch. High expectations for him in Penn State this year.
And continuing the strong games out of the box week 1. The Crimson Tide, and we were just talking about them.
Yeah.
Oh, it's going to be a big challenge. They're taking on some stiff competition. Who says Alabama schedules chumps? The pride of Murfreesboro, Tennessee.
That's right.
The Middle Tennessee State University Blue Raiders.
That's right. The Blue Raiders. I got family in Murfreesboro, man. I do. I have extended family in Murfreesboro. So
Murfreesboro's nice.
It's a nice area.
They're not beating Alabama, but
they're not beating Alabama. They are 40-point dogs in this game.
Yeah.
And I honestly don't bet much on. I look at the spreads. I talk about the spreads. I don't really bet much on college football or any sports really. But I'd probably take Bama if you force me to put money down. I take Bama on the points.
If you want to, you can't bet the money line. You have to play the points or the over under. There is no money line.
I see that. There is no. Oh my gosh, there is no money line.
I would go the over 51.5 points. I think Alabama will score that by themselves.
On their own.
Yeah.
All right. So, any other big games this weekend?
Well, outside of the fierce traditional matchup of the Crimson Tide against the Blue Raiders, a big Big Ten battle. Northwestern, the train wreck that team is, taking on the Scarlet Knights. I think the University of New Jersey starts the year out 1-0.
I agree. And I think hiring back Greg Schiano was the best move they could have made. The most success they've had as a football team was with him.
Absolutely.
And I think he's got a chance to really make some noise in the Big Ten. Now they're in the Big Ten East, so it's tough sledding. I mean, they're not going to contend, but I wouldn't be shocked if they finished 3rd or 4th. I really wouldn't.
They'll be a lot better.
They'll be a lot better, and they played pretty well last year. And yes, they had their typical letdowns, but they also fought through a lot of those games. It reminded me kind of like of the Lions season in the NFL early on, where you're losing games, but man, it's like you keep getting up and biting the kneecaps, so to speak.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's that mentality, and so that's what Schiano does, man. And he just works in Piscataway. He just does. And certain things just make sense. Peanut butter and jelly and Schiano and Piscataway. It just adds up. So I think he's got that moving in the right direction. I'll be anxious to see where Rutgers ends up in all the realignment. That's one of the bigger questions I have about the Big Ten realignment is where does Rutgers end up? Because they pose such a weird transportation and logistical nightmare for so many of those West Coast schools. And they're so woefully overwhelmed in the Big Ten East as it stands now. Are they maybe in some other, division of that?
I think the divisions will go away, and you'll see what the Big 12 is going to go to, and it'll be 14 pods.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Rutgers, Maryland, Penn State, and somebody.
Sure. Penn State wins that pod most years, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because in the Big 12, you're going to see Arizona, Arizona State, BYU, Utah.
Yep.
Kansas, Kansas State, Iowa State, Oklahoma State. So they're going to go to more geographically based pods just because the reality is all the non-revenue sports have to play in that league too. And it would be utter insanity to have your I don't know, your baseball team going cross country for a weekend and then swinging back. So they're going to play in pods where it's more like, honestly, an NFL schedule where,
Yeah,
okay,
well,
this year we're playing the NFC East.
Well, and like overall, don't you see it more going towards kind of an NFL type structure where there's maybe 30 to 40 top teams all in one division, and everybody else comes after that.
The reality is you're already there. I mean, the Power 5
thank you.
schools,
That's
and then everybody else.
exactly what I was going to say. That's exactly what I was going to say. You're already there. Okay, so the situation exists now where a school that's won a national title in the last 30 years, just because they're not part of a Power 5, could actually win out or have a one-loss season and not play for the championship. A couple of years ago, BYU was 12-0 and only lost the last game of the year to East Carolina, who is also undefeated. They flew across country to do so at the last minute. They probably would have never lost that game if it was a regularly scheduled game. BYU loses that game, and so they don't get a seat at the table. I don't think they would have either way. And here's the thing: BYU has won a national title in the '80s, which is more recent than a lot of SEC programs have.
Sure,
I that would have been a travesty. But in reality, here's the thing: if you can win every game on your schedule in a league, you are not really part of that league. You are an exhibition team.
You're Gonzaga. Well, hey, take a look at this too. And I know we're kind of winding down, but
yeah,
look at how infrequent there's a number one team that's not part of the SEC, the ACC, the Big 12, or the Big 10.
Right. Almost
and
never.
It never happens. I believe you have to go back to prior to 2008.
I would assume you'd have to go back to Pete Carroll, USC.
Yeah, I mean it's been a long time.
Off memory, Chip Kelly at Oregon never got quite that high. I'm trying to think of other guys. It got to be like Pete Carroll, USC.
USC may get there this year, but it's going to be hard because they're starting at 6. So they need everybody ahead of them to eat a loss, and you're not going to have many losses in there. I mean, obviously, Ohio State and Michigan, there's going to be a loss between those two.
And they got to deal with Utah at some point. And that Utah defense, they showed what they can do against Florida. Like you said, Utah to me looks like an old 90s Big Ten defense where they're not going to dazzle you with the numbers. What they're going to do is they're going to play super hard on third down, and they're going to make sure that you don't get in the red zone. They're going to play bend, don't break defense, keep you out of the red zone. You can kick a long field goal here or there, but you're not getting in the red zone. They're going to stop you on third down. You can move the ball between the 20s, but you're not getting past there. That's old school Michigan, Ohio State in the 90s type defense. And I think Utah runs it to perfection. You saw it in that game against Florida, and they've given USC, even with Lincoln Riley there, fits. And they'll continue to do that. And don't forget, they played that Florida team with a backup quarterback. Cam Rising comes back next week, and he'll, probably be in the game against USC. And Cam Rising is a hell of a young quarterback. He's one of the better ones in the country.
And hey, just to wrap up here, let's take a quick look out ahead to week 2.
Let's do it.
In the NCAA. Here's a matchup that's actually going to be a preview of a future SEC game. This is going to be a Saturday night game on ESPN. Hopefully you don't have Charter or Spectrum Cable. You'll be able to see it. Alabama taking on the Longhorns.
Yeah, what a matchup. We saw this last year. It was a closer game than expected, even after Ewers went out and Hudson Card came in. Now, of course, Card transfers, thinking like he had a great season, he can go start somewhere else. But Ewers is still there, back healthy. He really played well. Ewers really was reminiscent of like a Johnny Manziel against that Alabama defense, if I'm being honest, when I watched that game. And maybe that's overselling it, but I don't know. He plays the same kind of, sandlot backyard kind of football. And he's got that same dazzling on the run arm talent. What do you think?
I think it's going to be a long night for Texas, though. I think they'll get a glimpse of what they're getting themselves into. I don't see Alabama losing. I think they beat them down fairly handily.
You think it'll be less competitive than last year?
I do. Yeah. I think Alabama is going to be motivated because they're saying, hey, these guys are coming in. They think they can run with us. Let's show them they can't.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Alabama's, replacing a quarterback too. I mean, so we'll see, Bama is an interesting spot this year. Like we talked about earlier, Georgia seems to have kind of overtaken their spot of being the dominant team that just reloads year after year. And if you look at Georgia's recruiting class, it doesn't look like it's slowing down. So if you're Saban and Alabama, like you said, I mean, everybody kind of takes a step back at some point. This has to be a very, I don't know, almost desperate kind of feeling for them in a weird way.
Yeah, because, I mean, they're not used to losing. It's like when I was covering Ohio State. One loss, okay. If you lose 2 games, they're asking for a new coach.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So
I'm familiar.
It's definitely a pressure cooker.
Well,
and
right now,
really, for week 2, that's about it, because your other matchups, not to lead people away from watching College Gridiron next week, but the Bulldogs, Georgia takes on the Ball State Cardinal.
Washington State versus Wisconsin.
Ohio State University against Youngstown State. Penn State, the Delaware Blue Hens. This is actually a good game. Notre Dame against NC State. That is going to be competitive. And really probably the second best game, future Big 12 matchup, the Utah Utes off their victory over Florida.
Mm-hmm.
They take on Baylor in Baylor.
Don't forget Iowa versus Iowa State. That's a pretty good game, just to rivalry.
A contractually mandated game by the state government.
That's right. So I mean, and that's like you said, pretty much it. Wisconsin, Washington State could be interesting depending on how good Washington State is. Mississippi, Tulane.
Yeah, and maybe you're look to see what Oklahoma can do if they can circle the wagons.
Yeah.
SMU Mustangs.
It's a good little challenge for them. Do I think that there's probably no way they lose outright to SMU, but can they separate from SMU? SMU is a good program, and they've really had a nice bounce back here after being the only program I can remember given the death sentence in NCAA history.
Yeah.
If that never happened, SMU football would be up there, right? I believe still. They would be a top 10 type program.
And hey, just to dig into the weeds a little bit to see the level of excitement in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
How about this? You can buy tickets to that game right now for $28.
Oh, that stings.
That's not a good sign for the support level of the Sooners.
That stings. I was honestly looking at the Michigan Eastern Carolina tickets. They're more expensive than that to go see Michigan mollywomp Eastern Carolina in the Big House. Yeah.
And I guess it's not as bad as it could be, because if you want to go see the TCU Horned Frogs take on Nicholls State next week, it's $8.
$8?
Yeah.
That's
$8.
That's worth it.
AccuWeather long-term forecast is predicting a comfortable 100-degree day.
Maybe not worth it on that one.
Yeah. There you go. That's week 2.
That's September football for you.
Week 1 already up and going.
Yeah.
Throughout the season, what can people expect to see on the regular College Gridiron show?
Yeah, so I mean, we just do this every week. Basically, we'll talk mostly college football, a little NFL. Obviously, we're going to talk the award races as they heat up, the Heisman race. We're going to talk all the division races as they heat up, upsets. A lot of people are saying this looks like it may be a 2007, 2008 type year, with a lot of the teams that are jockeying for the top spot. Do we see a lot of upsets this year? And of course, we also monitor the hot seat, and typically we'll go through the top 5 games of the week and pick the spreads. And that's something we do right at the end of the show, give you a quick pick 'em. And that's basically it. We just have a lot of fun with it.
There you go. Yeah. Well, I think that would pretty much blow the final whistle on the show here on the Fired Up Network. And you can always check it out at firedupnetwork.ca. Just search wherever you get your podcast, whatever apps you're looking at.
Yeah, we're everywhere.
Definitely be looking forward to talking about more of college football and the National Football League with you. And if you're looking to get a little pro wrestling in, we had on former NWA heavyweight champion of the world, Trevor Murdoch. We're getting ready to have on more NWA champions, and son of a former NWA champion and king of the ring, Leland Race. His dad was Handsome Harley Race, the king of the ring. He's running World League Wrestling. We got him coming up soon on the Fired Up Network as well.
So cool.
Yeah.
Great to be part of the Fired Up Network right now, man. It just is.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I'm happy to be on there. And you can definitely get a lot of great sport content from all across the wide world of sports. The agony of defeat and the thrill of victory, all right there. Hey, Alex, thanks a lot. I'm glad we were able to hop in and help
Yeah,
out.
man.
And best
Thank you.
wishes to everybody dealing with the aftermath of the hurricane.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for your time today, man. I appreciate you coming and helping me out.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you.